The most popular television program on the face of the earth is Game of Thrones. It did not receive any Emmys this year because it was broadcast too late in its penultimate season. It is possible to speak hours on the different layers of this extraordinary television series. One of the actresses in about 2 seasons was Ona Chaplin, a Spanish-born, very accomplished actress who is the granddaughter of one of the most famous movie actors of all time, Charlie Chaplin of the silent era. Ona played a role in Game of Thrones that her grandfather would have been proud of. She was married to one of the protagonists of the show who not only wanted to be king of the 7 kingdoms, but truly was a humanist and wanted to improve the deplorable situations that so many of his fictional world must endure, such as poverty, slavery, oppression, and general corruption. We liked him very much. And he was also handsome. Her grandfather would have been proud because Charlie Chaplin, for a goodly portion of his career in the silent movies, was in every way vehemently against fascism. His classic movie, The Dictator, was a great achievement of political sarcasm, which mimicked the dictatorial rule of Adolf Hitler that completely, in the most negative terms, changed the geopolitical landscape of the world forever. Chaplin also played a Jew in one of his other movies, and in his private life was deeply sympathetic to Jewish concerns, so much so that many thought that Charlie Chaplin was Jewish, although he was not. So in a strange way, at least in the world of ideas, Ona Chaplin's role as a protagonist to find a better world than her grandfather's highly controversial opposition to fascism, which annoyed Adolf Hitler, proves to be a direct line. Charlie Chaplin's portrayal of the vestiges of fascism and the whims of an unbridled dictator are reflected in the cinema and on television, with the recent adulation over The Handmaid's Tale, Man in the High Castle, and yes, Game of Thrones, aspects of House of Cards, 7 Days in May, and the list goes on. We also see this in streams of literature, from Sinclair Lewis's It Can't Happen Here, George Orwell's masterpiece 1984, and we can throw in the psychological aspects of dictatorship in Lord of the Flies. And not to forget our own literary giant from Newark, Philip Roth's The Plot Against America. These fictionalized versions of fascism, of anti-Semitism, of cruelty beyond words, generating from government, which should protect people, especially the most vulnerable, are supposed to be fiction, at least when the United States is concerned. Hitler's regime was, of course, not fiction, and as I stated, the remnants of that time still linger as they were resurrected a few months ago in Charlottesville, Virginia. Swastikas parading in front of a synagogue should be rendered in black and white from a scratchy film service from 1932. The scene of hundreds holding flaming torches and screaming the vilest slogans decrying a United States that is open, progressive, and welcoming. Again, we should be seeing this in black and white. The nightmare of it all was that we saw this in state-of-the-art video and in real time. We did not see this in the streets of Hamburg or Berlin, but rather in the streets of Charlottesville, Virginia. Swastikas being paraded through a city not Berlin, Hamburg, or Bucharest, or Budapest, or Warsaw, but in the American city of Charlottesville. And not in the year 1932, but in the year 2017, it was gruesomely surrealistic. The Jews of Charlottesville who were praying on that Shabbat morning were so frightened they were forced to leave through the back door. They saw rogue armed militia in front of their synagogue. No legitimate police were in the area. They were scared. Kristallnacht was on their minds. Jews frightened to pray in the year 2017 in the state of Virginia is mind-boggling. Religious tolerance and freedom is a bedrock of American ideals. We know that. And these ideals were not discovered in recent history, and they never attained a political ideology in this country, whether it was liberal, conservative, Republican, or Democrat. Tolerance is the hallmark of our democracy. A mere 123 miles away from Charlottesville in 1584, and Elias Lengard, a Sephardic Jew, arrived in James City, Virginia. He was French, and he was asked to start a winery in Virginia. 30 years later, not only was he successful, dozens of other Jews joined him in Virginia. He wrote back to France, to his family and friends, that in this new world, there was freedom and virtually no anti-Semitism as existed in France at that time, and since he was Sephardic in Spain post-Spanish Inquisition. Along with his family and friends, over this period, he became wealthy and helped to establish the wine industry in Virginia. They owned thousands of acres of land, including in the environs of Charlottesville. They flourished. They weren't frightened to pray. America, as they stated, was their paradise. Donald Trump's winery in Virginia was originally owned so many years ago by the Legrand family. Religious tolerance was also established elsewhere in the colonies. The colony of South Carolina, for example, was originally governed under an elaborate charter drawn up in 1669 by the English philosopher John Locke, whose writings reflect that of our own Baruch Spinoza, who gave us the concept of the separation of church and state. This charter of South Carolina granted liberty of conscience to all settlers, expressly mentioning Jews. Charleston, South Carolina is 300 miles away from Charlottesville, Virginia, where the white supremacists chanted anti-Semitic slogans. In the most famous example, of course, in September of 1654, a famous year in this country, shortly before the Jewish New Year, 23 Jews from the Sephardic community in the Netherlands, coming from Recife, Brazil, then a Dutch colony, arrived in New Amsterdam, New York City. Governor Peter Stuyvesant, a virulent anti-Semite, tried to enhance his Dutch Reformed Church by discriminating against other religions. But religious pluralism was already a tradition in the Netherlands, and his superiors at the Dutch West Indies Company in Amsterdam overruled him, many of them Marrano Jews. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. We are not guests in this country of America. We are its hosts. Jews brought to this country the concept of openness, of tolerance. We forged the ideas that separate the United States of America from a substantial part of the rest of the world. So to see those who crawled out from under the rock to parade through the streets of an American city with swastikas is antithetical to everything this country was built on. We were here before them. Yet this surge in intolerance is being fueled by another ugly notion that informs us that immigration to this country should be extraordinarily selective, that only certain people, most especially Europeans, should be allowed to emigrate to the United States of America. They should speak English. South and Latin America and certain countries in the Mideast are all very, very bad places. The people there are frightening. The arguments that back these ideas are not supported by any evidence whatsoever. Immigrants from certain countries, or it seems even continents, we are told are terrorists, take away jobs from Americans, will never assimilate into our culture. The nationalist Americans produce multitudes of examples to prove this point. The evidence and statistics do not support any of this. In fact, they go in the opposite direction. Immigrants create jobs. They are more American than Americans. They are in the military. They fight for this country. They die for this country. The government, in so many nefarious ways, for an inexplicable reason, or should I say, very explicable reason, that is totally based on xenophobia, has decided that the ideals of this country are null and void. They beat the drum. An open America, they tell us, invites its own destruction. Again, fake news. Spurious ideas that do not stand the test of time or evidence. The first instance of open immigration of one nation welcoming another is in none other than our Bible. When Moses leads the children of Israel out from under the yoke of Egyptian bondage, the Bible tells us that he brought with him a mixed multitude. Therefore, not only Israelites departed from the land of Egypt, but also Egyptians. Why wasn't Moses suspicious of these people who were alien to the Jewish people? Could they be terrorists paid by Pharaoh to disrupt the entry into the land of Israel? There could be more mouths to feed with this mixed multitude. They could take jobs away from the Israelites, collect more manna from the desert. How could these Egyptians possibly assimilate into the Israelite culture that was established over 400 years in the land of Egypt? How could these people support anything Israelite? Yet Moses, with open arms, welcomed them in, and he never looked back. And more extraordinary are the children of this mixed multitude. Moses categorically stated that the first generation of all those who departed Egypt were not ready to conquer the land of Canaan, were not ready to establish the Jewish nation, but their children were. Yes, unbelievably, remarkably in our Bible, 3,000 years ago, the concept of dreamers, the children of immigrants, being the bedrock in establishing a new nation, emerged in our Bible. We as the Jewish people have fought for, sacrificed for the concept of immigration, the concept of assimilation. This is a bedrock concept of Judaism because, as it says over and over and over again in the Bible and in our prayer books, we were strangers in the land of Egypt. And those countries that took us in only prospered many, many times over. And we were expelled from every single country on the face of this earth, including Israel in medieval times. England, France, Spain, Portugal, all threw us out. Countries that we had lived in for well over 1,000 years. Russia, the Balkans, persecuted us, decimated us when we had given these nations prosperity and culture as Jews. We have no right to support anything that smacks of limiting or humiliating or castigating those who want to make their home in our nation. What is ironic about this entire insanity is that under both the Obama and Bush administrations, immigration was limited, and it is difficult, extremely arduous to become an American citizen. This has been an axiom of the Department of Immigration for well over a quarter of a century. Yet there are those who find that these heavy restrictions are not enough. Not enough. We should feel safer. All of us in this room should feel so safe when mothers are ripped from their families by gunpoint. We should be overjoyed that families are being crushed by law enforcement that sees those who are different as being primed for expulsion from this country. This is not fiction. This is not Germany of 70 years ago. This is America now. This is not rendered in black and white. It is seen in 4K in Technicolor. Hard-nosed business leaders, the most conservative of the most conservative of our nation, are vehemently against this. Business leaders know that the key to prosperity is new blood with different perspectives. So it seems in this instance, the government and the business establishment of this nation have parted company. Furthermore, even the military, which is the most conservative of the most conservative of the most conservative, stated emphatically, all branches of the armed service, that they welcome individuals from all backgrounds. This was after Charlottesville. To top this off, the government's support of the banning of those of different sexual orientations into the military doesn't seem to even have the support of the military. These bans against immigration, this war against sexual orientation is making our nation very unsafe. So we shouldn't wonder at swastikas being paraded through the streets of an American city. If anyone in this room feels that because they are white and because Jews have very high places in the government and they live in nice neighborhoods and they do not speak Spanish or Arabic, that you will have a pass in this new surge of hate. Let me tell you emphatically, here standing upon the campus of one of the great institutions of openness and learning in the world, hate does not discriminate. Hate impoverishes our lives, all of our lives. Not to sell a wedding cake for a same-sex marriage flies in the face of all religious teaching and is also a form of psychosis. And for any Department of Justice to support such is not patriotic. Using the fallacy of equivalency to those who carry swastikas and those who protest such filth is not patriotic. Seeing every immigrant as a terrorist, as a rapist, as a murderer, as a member of some gang is not patriotic. Seeing sexual orientation as a litmus test for normal entry into our society is not patriotic. And might I add, not religious in any credible religion on this planet unless that religion is entitled totalitarianism. The country of Israel, with all of its faults, and there are many, has so much to teach us on this subject. This is a country that assimilated close to 1 million Jews throughout the world after World War II. And as always, our immigration from whatever country, this is our strength. The children of these million immigrants, Israeli dreamers, and those who came after are establishing some of the most technologically advanced startup companies on earth. They're improving everything from cell phones to hearing aids to discovering medical marvels. If you are injured or hurt and you hail from Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Iraq, or Iran, you will be treated at Hadassah Hospital. No questions asked. And Israelis are a people that should really, really be frightened. But they're not. Their strength is in their normalcy. I love being Jewish because that's who we are, a big-hearted people that accepts and never rejects. That's why we're still here. In this we pray that the coming year is the year of tolerance, but more than tolerance, much more than tolerance, acceptance. so we can grow as individuals and blossom and prosper. That is the ideal of our people and the precious gift that we gave the world, the cherished gift we gave especially to this incredible country of America. Amen.